Shall we move on to COVID-19? We couldn't have a conversation without talking about COVID-19, unfortunately. So I know it's been talked to pieces, but I'm just keen to understand. I actually live in South Africa, so we have a slightly different take on it than the UK. Obviously, I keep in touch with what's happening, but I'm keen just to understand how Broanmain has coped with the changes that COVID-19, the pandemic, has brought around. Maybe if I start with you, Jo.
We've been incredibly lucky because we've worked right the way through the shutdown period, because we supply components that go into some critical infrastructure, and some of it's medical components. So 5 of our most important customers put a requirement in immediately that we must not close, that we must continue to work. So that made it easy for us to make that decision. We were quite quickly able to get social distancing in place in the workplace, where we were given quite clear government guidelines. That's been very helpful. Actually, implementing change at work has not been difficult at all. Managing the way people feel about it is the biggest challenge, I would say, and trying to adopt different behaviours. So trying to make sure people do keep distance. I think everybody recognises that's a challenge. But actually the roller coaster of emotion that everybody has, because they've also got their own personal challenges that, we all, normally we would all, I'd like to think as a team, sometimes people bring things to work and we help each other. But actually when we've all got things going on at work and at home, that's been a big thing to manage.
I mean, obviously in a manufacturing environment, I'd imagine there's very few people, maybe some admin staff, that are working from home.
We're trying to rotate the office so that most days somebody is working from home, but we can't. It's not feasible, and it's not how we're used to working. So a lot of people who work in service or in the city, let's say, they're used to working at home for 1 or 2 days a week, maybe. So there's quite a lot of infrastructure there. They've already got a bit of the skills embedded. We're nowhere near that. But actually, ultimately, we've got production lines and we need people to operate them, and there's nothing we can do about that. One of the other challenges that it's brought is that we invest quite a lot in training, and we've just taken on a couple of people who were midway through training programs, and they go off site to do that, and those training centres aren't running. So that leaves us with people who aren't developing, but are on training development programs, and they want to get on, they want to move their career on. And it's the same everywhere. They're not going to find anyone else that is able to do that, but that's a real challenge, because that was part of our development plan. You start then, and in 6 months you'll be able to do something else, and now they can't. So that's a bit of a challenge.
Andy, are you working from home?
Yes, I'm working remotely at the moment. If and when a client or a candidate needs me to meet them, I will do that. It's changed the dynamics, as Jo said, significantly in the last 4 or 5 months. For example, I've got a particularly big client up in the north of England, and they're a really large modular manufacturer, and they suddenly had to stop production, and so they closed everything down. Now, about 2 weeks before that, I'd been up to see them, and we'd met, and we'd decided on a certain amount of ex-military candidates for them, which I'd found. And I think I had 15 really, really strong candidates at one stage, but suddenly they couldn't train and they couldn't put them into work. And clearly, you can't ask, and I wouldn't want to ask people to wait. That's not right. And so we would try and find them work somewhere else. And a few of them have found jobs elsewhere. But fortunately or unfortunately, some of those are still without work, and now the factory is reopening, and we're starting to get them into the training pattern that the company has put in place. And as with Jo's manufacturing operation, they will now start to open up the gates, and everywhere you see now in the UK, the talk is about, let's build, we can't lock ourselves down indefinitely. If COVID's here, then we need to work how to work with COVID around us. Otherwise, It's just not practical to, and also psychologically, we come back to it again. If you've got someone who's sitting at home, got nowhere to go, or they're not going to school, they're not going to work, that is not good for society in general. On my side, we're dealing with people that sometimes they just want to talk. You might not have the job for them today, but they definitely want to talk to you. And so we'll always provide that, and we'll just keep on going. And if the job comes for them in 4 months' time, well, that's fine. That's fine. At least, with the dialogues going there, that's really important at the moment.
Just before we move on, I mean, Joe, I just a specific question for you and your position as managing director. I would assume that in normal situations you're out at meetings, at conferences, seeing key clients, that type of thing. Now that you can't physically be there, I mean, here's a good example. There's the three of us. I'm in South Africa and you two in different parts of the UK, sitting on a Zoom meeting. How have you embraced that type of technology that's helped you to sort of get you to places where you can't physically be?
I think it's a fantastic opportunity, actually, because in the last 6 months, we've made various 2.5-hour journeys to one particular customer to brainstorm the problem we've got. And we could have done it like this all along. We didn't need to. Tomorrow, I've got a meeting with that same customer. So like this. We're saving on fuel, we're saving on time, and it's getting everybody together. You can do it much more quickly, not because it's a smaller slot of their time. So I don't often have a 5-hour slot to drive to wherever it was I was driving to, but I only need an hour now to do that. So that's brilliant. I think I've done loads and loads of webinars on resilience, keeping your business resilient, keeping your team resilient, how to manage people working remotely, that kind of thing. And the training providers that we've used have turned that around very quickly. So we've taken advantage of that. And lots of people on those courses have talked about the fact that this kind of change in a business, normally it would take years to get people working remotely, to get people having these meetings like this, because there'd be training to do, there'd be risk analysis, but actually we've just had to get on and do it. And I think that is a definite positive of the whole situation. And one last thing about it is that so often in a big board meeting, as a woman, it's very difficult to find your way in. But for whatever reason, and I don't understand the difference, doing meetings like this levels the playing field. I don't know, and I don't know what that is. It must be a body language thing, that those sort of big, beefy men who've always got it all to say, it takes something away from them, I think, not being in the room. And it makes everybody a little bit more level. So I'm all for it.
Interesting. Yeah. Long may that last. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some difficulties and potential, pitfalls and challenges with this type of meeting, but as you just pointed out, I mean, that's a fantastic positive side.